In this edition of Architecture Comics, we go on a tour of the Kimball Art Museum and the Nordlands Kunsten Museum, two very different buildings across the world from one another, and examine how in the 60s through 70s the architects brought light and art to a troubled post-war world. The 60s through 70s were a troubled time in the world, from dealing with the consequences of World War II and the looming threat of nuclear war. At this time, however, there was a growing movement to reject the wrongs of the past and create a better future for all people. Following this, Louis Kahn and Alvar Aalto worked to bring some light to the world through their buildings and show what the world can be by putting forth the best of our past and present. Previously in world history, there are troubled times in post-war America. America is in the midst of a Cold War, and tensions with Russia are an all-time high. America is involved in many proxy wars in an attempt to keep communism at bay, while also trying to hold off full-on war with Russia that would certainly lead to nuclear annihilation. The nation's president, who had held off nuclear war when the Earth was at its closest to meeting its end, was assassinated on November 22, 1963, and only 5 years later, the civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. is also killed on April 4, 1968. However, America will not let this stop their march towards progress. A new culture arrives in America that works to peacefully resolve their problems without the need for violence, as well as continuing to fight for equality for all. America was not the only one going through hard times. The 20th century has also been a tumultuous time for Denmark. On April 9, 1940, the Danish government fell in a matter of 6 hours to the Nazi regime and was occupied by Germany until May 24, 1945. In the spring of 1946, the Soviet Union invaded the Danish island of Bornholm, and on May 9, 1945, the island was liberated from German control. However, the Soviet Union continued to occupy the territory themselves for almost a full year. Once Denmark was completely free from occupation, they were stuck in the middle of the two sides of the Cold War. The Danish are relying on American aid from the Truman Doctrine, while the Soviet Union offers constant reminders that, if war is opened against the USSR, the annihilating power of the modern weapons is so great it will be tantamount to suicide for foreign countries the size of Denmark. Despite this turmoil, Denmark is determined to use this time to rebuild and be better than they were before. They began to reject traditional ideas, becoming more progressive as they worked hard on social reform, helping create low-income housing, lowering the vote rate, and allowing convicts to vote, as well as continuing to break down gender barriers and having Queen Margrethe II be the first female to assume the throne. This pushing of boundaries also appeared in the Danish art world, becoming a bigger name in the avant-garde movement, with art fighting for feminism and personal freedom.
Hello, my name is Louis Kahn. I was born February 20th, 1901 in Parnu, Estonia, but my family moved to Pennsylvania when I was just a small boy and have lived there ever since. From an early age, I loved drawing and have always had a special knack for it. Growing up, my family was always tight on money, never being able to afford art supplies for me, but I made do expressing my talents with burnt twigs and matches. In fact, throughout my career, I continued to create drawings using burnt matches as I preferred the quality of a charcoal line. I studied and trained in the art of architecture at the University of Pennsylvania. In 1935, I opened my own office in Pennsylvania after years of traveling and working in Europe. Getting started proved to be difficult during the Great Depression, but I was able to take on a few commissions focusing on low-cost public housing in Philadelphia. Later on in my career, I was able to work on some pretty impressive and influential projects. Some of my most noteworthy buildings include the Jonas Salk Institute for Biological Studies in La Jolla, California in 1967, the Richards Medical Research Laboratories in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1965, and the National Capital of Bangladesh in Dhaka, Bangladesh, finished in 1974.
Hello, my name is Alvar Aalto and I designed this museum. I was born here in 1898. I've been told I'm the most famous and well-known Finnish architect. I went to school in the Helsinki Institute of Technology and graduated in 1921. In 1923, I opened up my own architecture firm. People knew me around the world by 1927, in part because of the many contests I entered. And when I first started out, I really liked classical architecture. Over time, I got into modernism and combined it with Finnish tradition. In 1930, I started getting more artistic with my design. I even started experimenting with monumental styles and using marble and bronze in my designs. This museum's history began all the way in the 1800s, but in 1963 I was officially hired to design its new building that would be more in line with its new direction as a modern art museum, and its collection including a mosaic by Picasso and a collage by Le Corbusier. Well, the building took longer to complete than usual due to the budgetary constraints. However, this gave me an opportunity to continue to expand on and rework some of my ideas. All the trees surrounding the building seem very intentional. Does anyone know why?
Not really. I designed the space to be a series of vaulted rooms which one could walk about freely.
Is this museum set up the same way?
No, this museum takes a very different approach to circulation. The Nordlands Kunstmuseum is designed with a strong sense of direction that leads the visitor through the entire experience. The building seems to flow around the heart of the museum, which is the beautifully lit large hall, and the sculpture hall, which is surrounded on two sides by additional galleries, which subdivide the largest space. The largest space of the galleries is broken up by square freestanding columns that support the flat ceiling.
This place looks different from what I've seen in pictures.
That's because the area is not static and the subspaces are created by movable partitions, allowing the exact circulation and flow of the building to be constantly changing. The spaces and circulation are also further divided by the building's two entryways and multiple stories. Both stories gently lead the visitor into the main areas with hallways or foyers. The lower story contains the building's restaurant, auditorium, storage, as well as the automobile entrance and parking. The upper floor contains the office's music room and galleries and is the entrance for pedestrian traffic. Both levels also have access to the outdoor area and amphitheater. The Nordlands Kunstmuseum is divided into public, semi-public, and private spaces, differently among its different levels. The top floor is filled with primary public spaces, with the galleries taking up the vast majority of the spaces. However, near the main pedestrian entrance, in the front of the court area, there are a few private offices. The downstairs, however, is a much bigger mixture with a combination of both public and semi-public and private spaces. The majority of the lower floor is reserved for vehicle parking, with lower entrance being adjacent to the storage and unpacking areas, which are both private. This entrance then leads an area containing the two semi-public auditoriums, as well as the private study on the right and the additional storage and restaurant on the left. I love the color palette of the materials. How did you choose?
Natural materials are my go-to because there's existent sympathy when they blend together. For example, I typically stick to only using wood, stone, and marble.
So you never use anything else?
I tend to make only two exceptions, which is concrete and steel. However, the concrete is never painted over or filled in because there's something aesthetically pleasing of the irregularities after being poured. And for steel, it can never be polished.
Wait, what? Why?
Well, that's because in nature, no material is ever polished.
I'm pretty sure that's why we can see the material, right?
Yes, I believe that a building should be put together in such a way as to reveal its natural structure.
So, what's this beautiful building made out of?
Marble is scattered everywhere. It's on the walls outside and in the floors inside.
But the interior walls are made out of brick, but they're painted white.
Yes, the ceilings are made of wood slats and also painted white. Isn't there also some interior structure too? Correct. The interior is made of a reinforced concrete.
What are those skylights made of?
The skylight windows are probably made of acrylic, right? They are. The light reflectors are also made of wood and painted white. Light is crucial and is gentle throughout the building to protect the art and provide the best lighting for them. Who designed the light reactor diffuser?
Also, are the cycloid shells covered with transparent acrylic plastic, which, if I'm not wrong, are supposed to help the direction of the sunlight from just directly coming down?
Yes, there are.
What about the lower levels? How do they get natural light?
I have placed light wells for the areas that do not receive filtered light from above. The natural light also reflects where your eyes are naturally drawn to the structure.
What about the bright lines of lights that are placed at the end of the vaults?
Those are placed there to help create a contrast with the filtered lights as well as put an emphasis on the wall's distribution. It seems like there's a lot more light coming into the galleries than in the Kimball Museum.
There is. This is because it's being reflected rather than being dispersed. In fact, we both use the same monitor light systems. Mine is an asymmetrical, double-sided version. The lighting also defines the spaces, I believe.
Yeah, I noticed the main hallway had a big reflector and there was a lot of natural light.
They do follow the hierarchy of spaces. Galleries tend to have them, while the other rooms have artificial lights or large windows, and that's how the spaces are named. This reminds me of something you did at the Vipuri library. I used the same techniques of bringing indirect light into the space as to not prevent the pieces from getting damaged. I believe you were also very intentional about where the artificial lights were placed as well, in order to create a special experience no matter what time of day.
Looks like there's some extreme precision going on there.
Light is crucial and is gentle throughout the building to protect the art and provide the best lighting for them. What acoustics are to a concert hall, light is for an art museum.